And it's April. I'm Anita R Ratnam. Hello, everyone. Coming to you with my monthly report on the events and opinions that are affecting and shaping the global world of South Asian dance. Welcome to the April edition of Anita Says. The world observes 4 seasons, but in India we celebrate 6 seasons, with the most anticipated being Vasanta, spring, the month of love and hope. Holi was celebrated with joy and gusto that was expected. It's a festival with the ritual of Radha and Krishna being drenched in the colors of spring, which bring with it the many shades and hues of love and bonding. Sitting here in Chennai, where the temperatures are rising every second, there's much to talk about. And the 2 main events in the dance and music world did not reflect much positivity. Most of the action was off stage, and the social media battles are ongoing, a battle and a tussle for words, egos, ideologies, and theories. Meanwhile, I saw this interesting quote on a friend's handle, and it caught my eye to perfectly reflect the mood of the month. To a man who only has a hammer, everything he encounters looks like a nail. These words, written and spoken by American psychologist Abraham Maslow. Sums up how harsh and shrill the tone was amongst some cultural circles and how words and emotions have hit many high notes with base intentions. What am I talking about? I'll get to that. But first, the good news. No, the great news. The iconic moment in New York City. I was on Times Square, giant screen in the Big Apple. Now, how can I not begin with excitement and exhilaration of that moment? To see my images promoting the new podcast Anita Says flashing on the largest LED digital screen in that iconic corner of New York City was simply euphoric. Woohoo! Yes! I did it and I let out a whoop of joy because it felt as if I had come a full circle to return to my former home where I began my media career. It was on the very same street as my television studio and a familiar sight when I walked past it daily. On New Year's Eve, I would stand along with thousands of people, staring up at those screens and waiting for the ball to drop. I've watched so many great brands and artists featured on those screens, and the largest screen always caught everyone's eye. And there I was. Words cannot describe my emotions. Excitement, yes, but so many more emotions. But mostly gratitude. A few minutes earlier, sitting in Chennai in the early hours of the morning, March 18th, I watched the clock wind down to 8:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in New York, which was Sunday, March 17th. And as the short video began playing, I watched the crowded square filled with tourists milling around. And there I was. Yes, I was there on that very same screen that has now become the most coveted media spot in the world. Phew. What a fantastic achievement for my marketing team, Team Anita Ratnam. A big thank you to them and possibly a first for Indian dance to occupy that space. Dancer Sonali Skandan captured that moment for us and described it as, quote, phenomenal and awe-inspiring to see it up close. Thank you, Sonali. Well, on to other matters. March began with a wonderfully received performance of Nachiyar Next in Bengaluru, with a standing room-only audience and every face wet with tears at the end. Rushing to catch a flight to Malaysia, I literally raced to the airport. Over the past 40 years, my frequent visits to Malaysia have always been memorable. With Guru Bhai Ramli Ibrahim as my friend and gracious host, memories have been terrific. This time, it was on the invitation of the business publication The Edge and its dynamic senior executive Diana Koo. As part of the Women's Day event, I was on the panel with 2 fabulous women. One, a self-portrait photographer Nadira Zakaria, and Malaysia's first woman-owned Michelin star restaurant in Penang, Auntie Gaik, a photographer, a chef, and a dancer, a Malaysian, a Chinese Malaysian, and an Indian. The conversation was free and flowing, with Nadira, the youngest, speaking of the tiresome statements from her elders about her single status and why that propelled her to become a self-portrait photographer. Auntie Gaik, meanwhile, spoke of being shunned and turned away by so many famous hotels and restaurants with the statement, "We do not allow women in the kitchen." When her son requested her to start cooking so that her recipes would not be forgotten, the now famous restaurant of the same name, Auntie Gaik, is booked 6 months ahead and is a testament to this 70-year-old's determination. I also had the opportunity to talk to the Indian dance community at the invitation of the Indian High Commission. With the Deputy High Commissioner, Chennai-born Subhashini Narayanan, in attendance, I spoke about the changing world and words swirling around dance practice and studies. I cannot and must not imagine that every idea that emerges out of American academia will find currency halfway across the world. The concepts of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusivity, has not yet arrived there, and neither has the concept of woke identity politics. The large and attentive audience of mainly dancers, teachers, and artists shared similar concerns about distracted students, porcupine egos that are waiting to be soothed and stroked. Almost every young dance student is taking the time and effort between jobs to stay in touch with their practice, and the mostly Tamil and Malayali diaspora community are considering dance and music as precious elements of their heritage. We move on to the topic of sabhas, awards, and their afterlives. So much activity and bristling energy in the classical dance and music world in March. 2 major events occurred almost simultaneously. The protest over the selection of the prestigious Sangeeta Kalanidhi Carnatic Music Award to TM Krishna by the Madras Music Academy, and the Colourism remarks made by Mohiniattam dancer KALAMANDALAM Satyabhama about a male Mohiniattam artist. Both announcements caused flare-ups of caste, class, and elitism all over again. In the case of the Madras Music Academy's selection of this year's Sangeeta Kalanidhi awardee, the Carnatic music fraternity was sharply divided about the choice, given the fact that it was TM Krishna, widely regarded as the rebel of the classical music world. In 2015, citing the stifling insularity, elitist and exclusionary practices in the Carnatic music world, its nexus to NRI money, and the dangers it posed to the art itself, Krishna announced his withdrawal from the December season calendar. Since then, he has shaped his image and grown his brand using every privilege along the way. Praised and trolled repeatedly on social media, some of his statements about India's musical legends have been downright unbecoming of his musical abilities. With the open support of the left-leaning media, especially The Hindu, that has consistently given him the space to air his views, the TMK juggernaut seemed hard to stop. Sri N. Murali, president of the Madras Music Academy, is also from the founding family of the Hindu publication. The connection is hard to miss. When Krishna's name was announced for the much-coveted award, it came as a surprise to many and a shock to many more. The fallout was immediate. The exodus of prominent performers was started by a social media post written by popular Carnatic vocalists Ranjini and Gayatri, who pulled out of the December season, citing the awardees' hate politics. Other prominent artists withdrew, and many more are still joining the list. The media circus has been a non-stop maelstrom of sharply worded opinions, creating a scenario of hero versus villain. As California-based writer Kalpana Mohan says, "All of India loves a villain. TM Krishna's stature now matches that of India's favorite mythological villain from the Ramayana, Ravana, himself a brilliant musician who had a tendency to separate people from their heads." End quote. The epic story also has the incident of Hanuman, who, when threatened by Ravana's entourage, elongated his tail and sat atop a tall throne to look down at Emperor Ravana. A staring match then begins. Who will blink first? TM Krishna is articulate, and convincing in his writings and speeches, but is nevertheless a polarizing figure. He has sparked important conversations around the practice and patronage of classical music and now dance. To many of his ardent supporters, his ready acceptance of the award, however, from the very institution he shunned 9 years ago, was even more surprising. He's now seen by several people as backtracking and betraying all his earlier social justice theories. However, in the end, it all boils down to a private organization that is giving an award to a talented and controversial musician. You're listening to Anita Says, a monthly podcast on South Asian dance in India and across the world. So what's next for the Madras Music Academy? The positive aspects of the Music Academy TMK controversy can be construed as a shift that has possibly occurred by the executive committee to overlook the slurs and slights aimed at them by Krishna and to begin the broadening of their own programming roster that has delivered a monolithic aesthetic of Bharatanatyam and Carnatic music over the past 15-20 years. The Academy held a 3-day Nagaswaram festival in their mini hall, which was ear-splitting and acoustical overload, but well attended, with most of the committee members present. The Nagaswaram is an open-air instrument and needs to be heard in the main hall during the December season. Perhaps TM Krishna can now work on issues that he's been citing from the inside instead of throwing stones from the outside. Can we finally see more diversity in dance styles that I have been repeatedly asking for in my writings? Audiences are not fools. They can make up their own minds. This is not a time for a frightened retreat by the right, for fear of invasion from the left, or the other way around. Good art will stand the test of time. This is also perhaps the time and place to ask how these private sabhas function. Most of the existing organizations in Chennai are family-based. Some, while not directly run by father-son-daughter template, also seem to function like closed-door, closely held feudal fiefdoms. There is little transparency in how artists are selected, very little change in the structure of the committees, a glaring lack of diversity in the background of the members who constitute the spine of these organizations. It is from there that the change needs to happen. A 5-year term, renewed once, should not be extended again and again. A change in the management and the committee structure every 10 years at least needs to occur to usher in fresh perspectives and ideas. If we look at the main sabhas in Chennai, the management has not changed in 15 to 20 years. Almost every name in the sabha committees is from a dominant caste community. How can this be a positive sign for any cultural organization? Today, Bharatanatyam is being taught, studied and performed by such a diverse range of students and artists. However, there are almost no academics or persons from the liberal arts on the board of these private organizations. None of these sabhas have an artistic director who travels and watches trends and notices emerging talent. None of them seem genuinely interested in shifting the needle or the conversations that occur around dance and music. Every single person on the committee has a day job that pays their bills, and so this sabha position is merely window dressing for social clout. If accountants, lawyers, hospitality managers, software engineers, temple historians, and dancer mothers dominate these committees and assert their power over artist selection for performance and awards, then we can only expect a continuous line of artists, head bowed, hands folded in submission, waiting for that pearl necklace of patronage and opportunity to be thrown around their necks. How can this continue? How can we expect professionalism in dance and music? The call for dismantling these towers of power and privilege cannot be achieved by one side agitating on social media using clever academic jargon. There has to be a concerted effort across identities and social strata to come together to create the change. Standing in corners with boxing gloves on, glaring like enemies and unwilling to move to the center, this is the current scenario. So, gloves on or off, whichever way you look at it, the present arts world is experiencing a churning and we need to watch with interest. I now move on to the issue of colorism in dance. In Kerala, the well-known Mohiniattam dancer KALAMANDALAM Satyabhama came under fire for a comment made during a long interview with a Malayalam YouTube channel. In this conversation, she spoke of the many problems that existed in the dance competition scenario in several Kerala cities, where winning the first place was once guaranteed a medical seat in a university. She spoke of the many challenges and problems in this context of dance competitions and also mentioned that one of the criteria was Soundaryam, beauty. While the interview raised several important points, her one comment about a male Mohiniattam performer and his skin color has been singled out. Ms. Satyabhama compared this particular performer without naming him, but saying, quote, the dancer from Chalakudi, a town in Kerala, as having, quote, the color of a crow, and continued with some more harsh words for him. Even without mentioning his name, the audience immediately knew she was referring to Mohiniattam performer RLV Ramakrishnan because she has had an ongoing feud with the dancer in the past. The Kerala film community has also joined the discussion, and subsequently, the complex politics of the dance competition scenario in Kerala has been totally forgotten. Earlier in March, the sudden death of a dance competition judge, Mr. Shaji, has shocked the community, leaving so many questions unanswered about the nexus between university dance competition and politics. While Ms. Satyabhama's harsh comments cannot be ignored, it is a call for the continuing obsession with colour that needs to be addressed. As of this writing, Ms. Satyabhama has not retracted her statement and holds firm with her original ideas and words, citing the Natya Shastra and its description of the many requisites of, quote, the ideal dancer. On March 27th, Kerala KALAMANDALAM announced that it would remove all gender disparity in admissions and welcome male students in the Mohiniattam department. They also expressed their wish to expand the curriculum to include Kuchipudi and performance studies in the revered institution in the near future. So apparently, the crisis did produce a response and a landmark decision. In an exclusive statement to Nartaki, KALAMANDALAM's Chancellor Dr. Mallika Sarabhai has said, quote, I have since my appointment been batting for gender, caste and religion bias-free education at KALAMANDALAM. Earlier this year, a young Muslim girl joined Kathakali, as did a child from Wayanad. The Education Board has now passed a resolution that admissions will be open to all. These are small steps for major victories in making it an inclusive 21st century institution of excellence. End quote. You're listening to the podcast Anita Says, a monthly roundup of South Asian dance in India and worldwide. So what's happening with Kalakshetra 1 year later? It was on March 23, 2023 that reporter Shubhangi Mishra from the online news portal The Print broke the scandal of sexual harassment on the Kalakshetra campus. It was a hugely embarrassing story for an institution of national excellence managed by the central government. The protests, led by the senior students and supported by some of the teaching staff, refused to die down and defied the news cycle for a full month. Now, a whole year later, the august institution, founded by Rukmini Devi Arundale, has not fully recovered from that serious incident. Yes, the perpetrators were fired, the main accused was incarcerated for a brief time, and a new director has now taken over. The question I raise is about the senior students who protested. Are they being punished for their bold stance? What about the teachers who joined the students? Have they been demoted in their jobs? I hear that the Kalakshetra Musical Orchestra has its own share of politics. There is no backup flautist, vocalist or violinist. Have the recommendations of the Justice Kannan Committee been implemented? What is the current board doing? Now this is a media story worth following. Not the current mayhem by loud protesters around a sabha and a singer. Reporter Shubhangi Mishra, who broke the story a year ago, has published a follow-up with worrying facts. According to the report, the protesting students were penalized for refusing to submit apology letters and denied performance opportunities in the February festival. So what then has really changed in a whole year? Nartaki flows onto year 25. Yes, we have entered that silver jubilee number, 25 years of our online presence begins on April 15th. Our small team of women cannot believe it. I still remember the day in 2000 when we turned 2 best-selling phone books into an online directory. Everything else grew organically, step by step. Through these decades, Nartaki has evolved, reflected opinions, helped cheer on emerging artists, and has been a prism through which so many of you have stayed connected. We've also stumbled and faltered on more than one occasion, but have never stopped to try to engage, discuss, argue, and persist on having important conversations around dance and the arts. At a time when division and distrust seems rife, it is all the more urgent that we remind ourselves of why we are in the world of creation and performance. Stay connected through our social media platforms, and please listen and subscribe to our podcasts on Spotify and Apple. To Lalita, Sumati, Raksha, Subhashri, and Mugdha, I say thank you for all your love and support, and thank you to the listeners and readers for your unstinting support all these years. With L. Baba Prasad at the Digi Sound Studio in Chennai, I'm signing off on a note of hope and cheer. Stay cool and remember what drives you to wake up every morning. It has to be what I'm talking about every month in this podcast and in my monthly column online of what has possessed me for over 60 years: dance. This is Anita Ratnam. Thank you for listening. And remember, do subscribe to this podcast and watch out for more episodes.